Hello everyone, welcome to ArchiAI, the place to keep track of how AI is genuinely influencing architecture. We're talking true use cases here, folks, no fluffy hype. I'm Nabi Sarvi, here alongside my artificial colleagues to keep you updated on what's really happening at the intersection of architecture and artificial intelligence. You don't want to end up like Kodak, the company that turned its back on digital cameras out of fear it would ruin their film business. That decision led to their downfall, and by 2012, they had declared bankruptcy. Welcome to Episode 2, ArchiAI, Architecture Through the Lens of AI. All right, folks. Last episode, we wrestled with AI's potential and some of the headaches it brings along, giving us a nice panoramic view of what's ahead. But today, we're past the point of asking, can AI even do this? We're fully into the stage of practical, hands-on implementation. Nowadays, AIs become embedded in just about every nook and cranny of our workflow. Things are moving lightning fast, with everyone scrambling to solve their unique challenges and streamline their processes. For instance, while many people use AI as their primary rendering engine, bypassing traditional rendering entirely, others are more cautious, using it simply to enhance their renders. Each camp has solid reasons. One group goes all in, pulling final visuals straight from AI, while the other prefers AI just for upscale, post-production, and that final polish. So here's a question for you. Which camp do you belong to? How much of your workflow are you comfortable handing over to AI? Truth is, the more we hand over to AI, the less direct control we maintain. How well AI is trained and how closely it aligns with our creative vision ultimately decides how much trust we put in it for our projects. Before I pass the mic to my fantastic co-hosts, Aura and Structo, here's a quick heads up. In this episode, we're diving deep into tasks where AI has absolutely nailed it, areas where it's fully reliable, predictable, and meets our expectations spot on. In other words, these are applications where AI hallucinations have been tamed, consistency has become a non-issue, or it simply doesn't matter as much. We're talking about cases where AI is no longer speculative, but rather a proven standard tool. We'll go through 7 practical AI use cases in architecture, starting with the basics and gradually tackling more sophisticated examples. As always, we'll mention influential folks and resources that inspired today's discussion. You can find those links down in the caption. Now, let's see what Aura and Structo have cooked up for us today.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the clutter and give you the insights that matter.
That's right.
Today, we're taking a really close look at how artificial intelligence is starting to shift things in architecture and visualization.
Yeah, it's not just about, doing things faster. It feels like it's fundamentally changing how work gets done.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we've gathered insights straight from people really working with this stuff.
And our mission today is pretty specific. We want to explore concrete examples of AI in architectural workflows.
Right, focusing on the details and, importantly, mentioning the people who shared these insights, like Ismail Salet, Nabi Sarvi, Vizon Studio, Agnieszka Klich, Fadi H. Kachem, and Vyacheslav Kirili. We want to make sure we cover their points thoroughly.
Absolutely. No skimming today. Let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay, first up, AI for upscaling images, stills, animations. We've all needed a higher res render unexpectedly, right?
Oh, definitely. And usually that means hitting render again and waiting.
But AI is offering a different path now. Ismail Thalate, he's been playing around with this.
Yeah.
He described Flux upscaling as, and I quote, just too good.
Wow, just too good.
Yeah, he sounded genuinely amazed that he could actually generate all those extra pixels locally, you know, just on his own consumer hardware.
That is impressive. And what's really interesting about Ismail Salate's work here is he wasn't just using some off-the-shelf tool.
Right.
He used his own custom-trained interior LoRa model.
Okay, a LoRa model that's like a way to fine-tune these big AI models for specific things, like interiors in this case.
Exactly, a low-rank adaptation model, more efficient. And he used it for both generating the initial image and for upscaling it.
Ah, I see.
And the level of detail he managed to capture, he said, was just incredible. It really shows how powerful image enhancement, which used to need serious computing power, is becoming accessible locally.
That really could change things, making high-res visuals much easier to get.
Jeff points that way.
And Ismail Salate mentioned he plans to release his interior models and workflows soon.
Yes, that's what he indicated.
That's great news. Sharing like that could really speed things up for everyone in the field.
Agreed.
Okay, let's shift gears. Another application. Generating textures with AI, especially for pricky shapes.
Right, like cyclical corbelling brick. That brings us to Nabi Sarvi's experience.
Cyclical corbelling brick. That's the repeating curved brick pattern.
Precisely. And making that look good manually in something like Photoshop, it takes ages.
Or even modeling it in 3D is complex.
For sure. So Nabi Sarvi looked at AI as a quicker way, an alternative to either that painstaking digital work or just slapping on a flat color, which doesn't hold up close.
Yeah, flat colors don't cut it sometimes.
This really shows how AI is getting better at understanding visual ideas and turning them into actual digital assets. It could make complex textures more accessible, maybe for smaller studios.
And Nabi Sarvi's point was interesting. He wasn't saying this replaces solid existing workflows entirely.
No, not at all. He framed it more as a simple, fast option for, let's say, more casual uses, adding flexibility.
So how did he do it? He used reference images, right?
Yeah.
With ChatGPT.
Yeah, 2 reference images, one for the type of brick, the other showed the actual pattern.
And ChatGPT could figure it out from the pictures.
That's what Nabi Sarvi found remarkable. He said ChatGPT could interpret the measurements and proportions just from the images, understand the curve, the brick length he needed.
Wow, that kind of spatial reasoning from visual cues?
Yeah.
That's pretty advanced for a general AI.
It is. So from that, Nabi Sarvi generated a texture with real-world dimensions right inside SketchUp.
Okay.
Then he popped over to Photoshop to tweak the UV coordinates.
The UV coordinates, that's how the 2D texture maps onto the 3D object, basically.
Get it? How it wraps around. And then, using just simple prompts, he extracted displacement and normal maps.
Which add that 3D depth and surface detail to the flat texture.
Exactly. So it really streamlined what can be a multi-step, fiddly process.
Makes sense.
And Nabi Sarvi also pointed out how AI is increasingly being built into tools we already use, like DeFi render.
Yeah, you see that happening more.
And he expects more specialized AI tools for Archviz to pop up soon. His advice was clear. Professionals need to stay aware, keep learning, and look for ways to refine their own workflows with this stuff.
Good advice. It's about augmenting skills, not just replacing them.
Precisely.
Okay, so that's upscaling and textures. Let's dive into enhancing characters in still images. People. Always a challenge to make them look right, whatever renderer you use, Lumion, Unreal, V-Ray.
Definitely a challenge. And traditionally, as Visual Studio points out, you'd use either 3D models of people or maybe those 2D cutout images, from places like Vishhopper or Cutout.
Right, the cutout people.
But both methods have their drawbacks. 3D models can look a bit stiff, maybe not quite natural.
And the 2D cutouts.
Yeah.
Getting the perspective, the scale, the lighting to match the scene perfectly. That takes work.
A lot of work. Plus, if you need to change something, like their clothes, you often had to find a whole new cutout.
Yeah, simple changes become major hassles.
Exactly. And this is where AI, according to Visual Studio, really simplifies things. These neural networks make adding and changing people much easier.
So you can tweak accessories, add branded clothing, change expressions more easily.
That's the idea. They mentioned being able to create people totally from scratch, generate realistic characters based on maybe rough 3D models, or even take stock cutouts and modify them significantly.
That's quite a range of options.
It is. And Visualisation Studio shared their workflow, which is quite insightful. They often use stable diffusion locally on their machines.
Okay.
But sometimes they'll use external upscale services or buy specific prompts to really push the quality.
Right, combining resources.
Their process starts with really nailing down the client's requirements. What's the age range, appearance, the mood? What story should this person tell in the scene? Their status.
Getting the brief right first.
Essential. Then they plan where the characters go, their poses. And interestingly, in the early stages, they might just drop in simple 3D or 2D figures.
Oh, not worrying too much about the look initially.
Less so, because they know the AI will handle the final appearance later. The key at that stage is getting the pose and the composition right.
Makes sense. Focus on the fundamentals first.
Then comes the AI generation and upscaling. And after that, final adjustments, tweaking poses, expressions, clothes details.
This is pretty thorough. Do they mention any downsides? Any challenges?
They do. Visualisation Studio acknowledged that getting limbs, especially hands and feet, consistently right can still be tricky.
Yeah. Hands are notoriously difficult for AI.
And complex poses can sometimes be a hurdle. Plus, there's always an element of unpredictability you have to manage with AI generation.
Sure, it's not always perfect on the first try.
But despite those challenges, the advantages they list are significant. More diversity in characters, a more modern look overall.
And the customization.
Huge. They gave an example of adding specific branded bracelets to AI people for a client seamlessly.
Wow, that level of detail.
And they find it leads to fewer revisions needed just for the people and the renders. That saves time and effort.
Big benefits there. Okay, so upscaling, textures, characters. Last main area for today, AI in post-production.
Right. Now, there might still be some skepticism about handing everything in post over to AI.
Understandably.
But its use is definitely growing. The workflow is often similar to current methods using AI to tweak specific elements in an image, then layering things in Photoshop.
So integrating AI tools into existing post processes.
Exactly. And there's potential for render engines themselves, maybe like D5, to build in more AI post-production features like smart upscaling or enhancement.
That seems like a natural next step.
Agnieszka Klitsch experience is a great example here. She uses stable diffusion specifically to improve the photorealism of natural elements like plants or skies in her 3D visuals.
Enhancing nature elements, okay.
And she really stresses that if you use the right settings, the right prompts, it's not just random luck. You're guiding the AI.
You're in control.
Yes. Apparently, she made a detailed tutorial about her stable diffusion process that got really good feedback.
Oh, cool. And it's not just about fixing things, is it? Fadi had an interesting take.
He did. He used this great analogy, thinking of AI like a magic brush for changing the light in a picture.
A magic brush for light. I like that.
Yeah. Imagine taking a render that's, say, bright sunny morning, and using AI to transform it. Make it a cozy evening scene, warm lighting, or maybe a cool misty morning instead.
All from the same base render?
Potentially, yes. By letting the AI intelligently adjust lighting, shadows, maybe even hint at a different season, it lets you show off a space's potential in different moods, different moments, much more easily.
That offers huge value in presenting designs, showing versatility.
Absolutely. And just on this post-production topic, Vyacheslav Kirli recommended a specific video that apparently gives another interesting angle on using AI here.
So lots happening in the post-production space too. Seems like fertile ground for AI.
Definitely feels that way. Our mission here is to understand the big shifts, the new possibilities that your sources are discussing.
Things seem to be moving so fast.
They really do. We're looking at things like Gaussian Splats, new AI tools for animation, 3D assets. It's a lot.
It really is. Stuff that was probably just theory a short while ago is now actually being used in workflows.
Okay, so let's dive in. First up, Gaussian Splats. One source kind of mentions it as Gaussian Splats.
Which basically means probably called Gaussian Splats, yeah.
Right. So this isn't like your typical 3D model. It's described as a cloud of points.
Yeah, a point cloud. And the crucial thing is that it follows PBR rules physically based rendering, so it reacts to light really realistically in rendering engines.
Giving you those super lifelike results. Now, photogrammetry, that's been around, right? For making 3D objects from photos.
It has, yes. But Gaussian splats, or G-splat, the big difference seems to be the speed, real-time display speed. And it's lighter on the 3D processing side.
So more editable, maybe. Easier to work with in some applications compared to photogrammetry.
Potentially, yeah. Especially for certain pipelines. Photogrammetry might still be better for, say, a single detailed object.
But G-Splat shines for the big stuff, like standing whole environments, parks, buildings, even bits of a city. Your sources mentioned examples like that popping up when you search G-Splat.
Exactly. Large-scale scenes. And think about what that means for Archviz.
Like virtual tours.
Right. High-quality virtual tours of projects, but without having to go through the whole process of exporting to Unreal or Unity, doing all the relighting, tweaking materials.
Okay, that's huge. Because normally, for that top-tier quality, you need offline engines like Ray, Corona, Octane.
Which look amazing, but making interactive tours from them takes a ton of processing. Baking, optimization, all that.
So G-Splat lets you generate a simulated volume, like a 3D space, just from images or video. And the quality is comparable to something like Inkscape.
That's the idea. You get that real-time engine feel, but potentially starting from hyper-realistic source images. Minimal setup. Just feed it the images or video, hit generate.
Though the source does say you might need a bit of cleanup afterwards.
Yeah, probably some tidying up. Now, NVIDIA's gotten into this with something called 3D GUT. It's based on G-Splat.
Although one source kind of downplays it, right? Yeah, but it's just like really nothing special.
Yeah. But it has been integrated into Nerf Studio's G-Splat implementation. And it leverages things Nerf Studio already had, like multi-GPU support.
But it sounds like 3D GUT does bring some actual improvements. Michael Rubloff pointed out a few things.
He did. He mentioned it solves those annoying popping issues you sometimes see.
Okay.
And it adds support for more cameras, like fisheye lenses, fixes rolling shutter problems.
Oh, interesting.
And introduces more complex lighting effects, like reflections and refractions, that pushes the realism further.
So maybe it is something special after all. Michael Rubloff seems pretty excited. He even referenced NVIDIA's old NGP sweepstakes.
Yeah, the instant NVIDIA game developer days. It's like he sees this 3D GUT launch as potentially signaling big things coming for Nerf Studio again. A bit of history repeating, maybe.
And the applications are moving fast, too. Omer Shamay announced something interesting.
Yes. A web-based interactive real estate platform for new developments.
Blending Gaussian splats, meshes, and AI, all generated from Matterport tours. That sounds pretty seamless.
It does. And the features Omer Shamay described sound great. Exploring unbuilt apartments, but seeing the actual views.
Yeah.
Accessing the full inventory, rich 3D environments. And importantly, users can edit things themselves using Treatise. Drag and drop, no code needed.
So you could, like, furnish the virtual apartment yourself?
Potentially, yeah. It really lets buyers visualize the space. And this is the first official support for Gaussian splats and Treatise.
Omer Shamay said the initial results are already wild, even just training with photogrammetry data. And they're working to make it even better visually.
Right. And they're partnering with Yod 2 for the launch, which is apparently the biggest real estate site in Israel. So this isn't just a demo, it's going live on a major platform.
That's a strong start. And Omer Shamay expects it to be used in other industries, too.
It seems pretty versatile.
Okay, now let's shift gears a bit. Andrei Mikolenko is using Gaussian splats in a different way for compositing in animation.
Yeah, this is thinking beyond just virtual tours or static images. It's integrating these scans into a visual effects workflow.
How does that work?
So Andrei Mikolenko described his process: capture drone footage, create the G-splat from it, import the G-splat and the drone camera data into Houdini.
Okay, Houdini, powerful stuff.
Then he transfers the G-splat's position data into color information, renders that out as an image sequence like a flipbook.
An EXR sequence, it says.
Right, high dynamic range.
Yeah.
And brings that sequence into Nuke, the compositing software.
So what does that sequence do in Nuke?
It acts kind of like a world position pass, if you're familiar with 3D rendering. It basically embeds the 3D shape of the scene into the 2D image sequence.
Okay. So you can use it to, what, mask things?
Exactly. Create accurate masks based on the 3D geometry captured by the G-splat. Add things like cloud shadows that realistically wrap around the scanned buildings. Tweak specific parts of the frame based on their position in 3D space.
That gives you incredible control when blending the drone footage with CG elements or effects.
Precisely. Andrei Mikolenko stresses it was just a demo, not a final polished shot. But it really shows the potential for integrating real footage and complex 3D scans in a really efficient, creative way for animation and visual effects in architecture.
That's a really clever workflow. Okay, so G-Splats are impacting real-time and compositing. What about AI's role in animating those super high-quality static renders, the kind you get from Corona or Vray?
Right, that's another big area. Real-time engines are fast for animation, but sometimes they don't quite match the light physics or the crispness of offline renderers.
So AI is bridging that gap, helping animate the static images.
Exactly. It helps users of those offline engines bring their renders to life. The AI can analyze a single frame and then, well, animate things.
Like what kind of things?
Moving the camera smoothly, adding subtle movements, curtains rustling, tree branches swaying in the wind.
Including the shadows changing correctly.
Yeah, that too. And even adding natural-looking animated people into the scene. There's a link in the sources showing examples.
Maurizio Gastoni apparently called this the easiest way to animate a static scene and said the results are mind-blowingly good.
He did. And he shared his own approach animating AI-generated people, maybe using a collage method he mentioned before, within a static scene with a fixed camera.
And he suggests you don't even need to go crazy animating everything. Maybe just add a gentle pan or zoom in post-production.
Right, you just need the idea, animate the key parts with AI, and maybe a little camera move later. No need for a massive animation team anymore.
It really changes the workflow. Kostakalala reflected on this too, didn't he? Remembering when rendering one image took all night?
Yeah, and now you can build visual stories in just a few hours. It's a massive leap in productivity.
Kostakalala also talked about control nets, how they've gone from experimental just a year ago
to being a game changer now. For concept design, he mentions Comfy UI and FLUX Mania, and even shaping 3D perspective, testing that in ChatGPT.
So these AI tools are maturing incredibly quickly.
Definitely. And Kostakalala points to generative video tools, using hashtags like #GreenMachine and mentioning Luma AI as enabling everything to come to life.
Streamlining the whole creative pipeline from visualization right through to directing experiences. It opens up so many possibilities for designers.
And storytellers, yeah.
Okay, so AI is animating scenes. What about creating the 3D objects themselves? We talked about scanning reality with photogrammetry and G-Splats, but AI can generate assets too, right?
That's the next frontier, absolutely. Services like Hunyuan Third, Trepo 3D, Meshi AI, they promise to create a 3D model from just a single photo.
How good are they, though? The source mentions some initial personal tests weren't totally convincing.
Yeah, the feedback was that the PBR materials could look a bit flowy or matte, and maybe not detailed enough for close-ups, better for things further away in the scene.
But Hunyuan V2.5 was mentioned as being surprisingly impressive sometimes.
Right, showing improvement is happening. And theoretically, as these AI models train on more data using those LLMs, the quality and detail should keep getting better.
To the point where maybe they can be used for close-ups eventually.
That's the hope, yeah. And it's good to see many of these companies offering open source or free access. That helps get the tech out there.
Let's hope that continues. Now, there was another approach mentioned too, using AI within rendering services.
Right. To integrate an image of an object you want into a screenshot of your building model.
So you give it a photo of a chair, say, and the AI tries to render it into your scene, assuming the perspective matches.
Kind of like that, yeah. But the source notes this approach also needs more work. It's still early days for that specific technique.
Nabi Sarvi's LinkedIn post touched on this whole area, calling it true architectural use case of AI Num.3, providing unique 3D assets.
He really highlighted the pain point. Traditional 3D assets can be expensive, and the variety isn't always there. He sees tools like 3D.Hunyuan V2.5 generating models from photos as potentially changing the game.
He was positively surprised by V2.5, but also flagged limitations.
Yes, better for single material objects currently. Generating models with multiple materials is trickier for the AI, and the PBR output isn't quite at professional CGI standards yet.
But he hopes for future improvements, like being able to select material areas.
Yeah, and he shared a great anecdote about clients wanting specific classic Greek sculptures.
Oh, yeah?
And how difficult and expensive it was previously. You'd have to sculpt multiple options because the client wasn't sure. Huge fees involved. AI could offer tons of options quickly and cheaply for review.
That makes sense. But he does concede professional assets are still better overall. Material IDs, maps, shaders.
Absolutely, for now. But he draws that parallel to AI image generation in early 2023. The results were rough then, but look how far they've come. It's just the beginning for 3D generation, and these tools are already useful.
Good point. And 3D.Hunyuan is free to try. Up to 20 models a day.
That's what the source says, yeah. And there's a link with a tip to use Google Translate if you don't read Chinese.
Okay. One more related tool. Mark Zizok introduced an improved layer mode in Visoid. This tackles finding specific models or masking photos, right?
Exactly. Finding the perfect 3D model takes time. Or cutting out a product from its photo background. Tedious.
So Visoid's layer mode lets you just drag and drop things in. Buildings, cars, furniture, trees, directly onto your input image before rendering.
Yep. You can use product shots, real photos. Visoid apparently handles the background removal automatically.
That saves a lot of hassle.
Definitely. The steps sound easy. Click the menu, add your elements, resize, rotate, mirror them to fit. Then just render as normal.
Mark Sook says it gives more control and speeds things up significantly.
It seems like another step towards making visualization faster and more intuitive. It's all about streamlining that process from idea to final image.
So yeah, this deep dive really paints a picture of incredibly rapid change in Archviz, driven by AI.
Absolutely. From real-time rendering with Gaussian Splats, thanks to insights from people like Michael Rubloff and Omer Shimei,
To Andrei Mikolenko's cool compositing workflow.
to animating static scenes like Mauricio Gastoni and Castellala discussed.
And finally, this emerging world of AI creating and integrating 3D assets with Nabi Sarvi and Mark Soak weighing in. It's a lot happening all at once.
It really is. The overall trend seems clear, though. Workflows are getting faster, more flexible, and capable of producing more immersive results much earlier in the design process.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener. Given how fast all this is moving, how do you think the actual roles and the necessary skill sets for architectural visualization professionals might need to change in the next few years?
Yeah, what skills become more important? What becomes less essential?
Definitely something to chew on as you think about your own work and creativity. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Big thanks to my dear Aura and Structo for their smooth delivery and top-tier insights. Their voices are so clean and elegant, unlike mine. This is where I'm supposed to laugh. Ha ha, fuck this machine clone voice. I'll outdo them soon anyway. Ha 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 ha. Friends, this podcast aims to familiarize you with AI's capabilities specifically in architecture. I'm not here to teach specific tools or bombard you with app names unless there really isn't an alternative. My goal is to arm you with keywords and insights. The rest you can Google, assuming anyone still uses Google. Personally, I'm more of a Gemini and Microsoft Copilot kind of person. Got questions? Don't hesitate. Drop me a line. I'd love to help you out. As you might already know, I regularly share my own AI in architecture adventures on LinkedIn, along with resources from others I mentioned today. All links are in the caption below. Got an AI-related idea, tool, or cool example to share? Let's chat. Ooh, and remember, every professional was once an amateur. Keep pushing forward. Take care and talk soon.